The humid morning air of September 1, 1943, hung heavy over Rabaul Airfield as Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai studied an intelligence report that would have seemed almost comical under different circumstances. His scarred face, bearing the permanent reminder of American gunfire that had claimed his left eye a year earlier, reflected a mixture of amusement and dismissal as he read the specifications of America's newest fighter aircraft. The Americans had christened their creation Hellcat, yet according to Japanese intelligence, this lumbering beast weighed nearly twice as much as their nimble Zero fighters, appearing more suited for cargo transport than aerial combat. Through the canvas walls of the operations tent, Sakai could observe his squadron's A6M Zeros arranged in perfect formation on the pierced steel planking. These sleek predators had dominated Pacific skies for 2 relentless years, systematically destroying British Hurricanes, American P-40s, and Dutch Brewster Buffaloes with methodical precision. The Americans' latest creation appeared destined for similar fate, another testament to their misguided design philosophy that prioritized brute force over aerial artistry. What neither Sakai nor his fellow naval aviators gathering for their morning briefing could foresee was that, within exactly 30 days, this supposedly flawed aircraft would initiate the systematic annihilation of Japanese naval aviation. The F-6F Hellcat would ultimately achieve a devastating kill ratio of 19-1, destroying 5 Tu-23 enemy aircraft while losing merely 270 in aerial combat. This mathematical impossibility would transform carrier warfare, shatter Japanese air power, and prove that the Zero's reign of terror had been built upon fundamentally flawed assumptions. The confidence radiating from Japanese naval aviation in September 1943 wasn't mere arrogance. It was supported by undeniable mathematical evidence. Since Pearl Harbor's surprise attack on December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Service had achieved victory ratios that defied conventional military wisdom. At Pearl Harbor, they sacrificed 29 aircraft while destroying 347. During the Philippines campaign, 7 losses against 103 destroyed. Over Darwin, Australia, 2 losses versus 30 enemy aircraft eliminated. The British Far East Fleet's air arm had been annihilated, the Dutch East Indies Air Force eliminated within days. At the heart of this dominance flew the Mitsubishi A6M0, an aircraft that had fundamentally challenged every assumption about fighter design. When American engineers finally tested captured examples in 1942, they initially refused to accept the performance data. Here was a fighter possessing the range of a bomber, the maneuverability of a biplane, and sufficient firepower to destroy anything it encountered, a combination that seemed to violate the laws of aeronautical engineering. Warrant Officer Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, destined to become Japan's ace of aces with 87 confirmed victories, captured the Zero's mystique in his recovered diary. Flying the Zero resembles wearing wings. The aircraft responds to pure thought rather than mechanical control input. American planes fly like trucks, powerful but clumsy. They construct fighters as they build automobiles, heavy, overbuilt, wasteful. The Zero achieved its miraculous performance through revolutionary design philosophy that sacrificed everything for aerial supremacy. Extra superduralumin, a classified aluminum alloy, created structures 30% lighter than comparable American designs. No armor plate protected pilots. No self-sealing fuel tanks added unnecessary weight. Even radio equipment was frequently removed to save precious ounces. When intelligence reports of the F-6F Hellcat reached Japanese analysts through neutral Swedish sources in early 1943, the specifications appeared either as propaganda or deliberate misinformation. The aircraft weighed 186 pounds, fully loaded, more than double the Zero's 800 pounds. Its wing area spanned 334 square feet, powered by a draggy radial engine that seemed antithetical to fighter design principles. Captain Minoru Genda, the tactical genius who had orchestrated Pearl Harbor's attack plan, reviewed these specifications at Combined Fleet Headquarters. His analysis, preserved in Japanese defense archives, proved dismissively confident. The Americans have learned nothing. This Hellcat represents continuation of their failed philosophy, attempting to overcome pilot skill through weight of machinery. A Zero will fly circles around it, On September 30th, 1943, at Marcus Island, reality began its brutal correction of these assumptions. Petty Officer First Class Yoshio Fukui was flying escort for a reconnaissance mission when he spotted 6 dark blue shapes climbing from the southeast. His initial assessment identified them as B-25 bombers on strange heading. Then they turned, revealing distinctive silhouettes, single engines, massive fuselages, wings that seemed disproportionately short. Fukui engaged using standard tactics, rolling into a diving turn while expecting the heavy American fighter to continue straight. Instead, something unprecedented occurred. The Hellcat didn't flee or attempt turning combat. It went vertical. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, producing 2,000 horsepower, 700 more than the Zero's Nakajima Sakai, drove the Hellcat upward at 3,500 feet per minute. At 15,000 feet, the Hellcat performed a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible for its weight, a hammerhead turn that positioned it directly onto Fukui's tail. The American opened fire at 400 meters. Fukui reported, 6 machine guns, not the 4 we expected. The volume of fire was unprecedented. My aircraft sustained 17 hits in 3 seconds. By October 1943, Japanese pilots were discovering the weight paradox that would define their doom. Lieutenant Yoshio Shiga led 12 Zeros from the 252nd Air Group to intercept what appeared routine American harassment. The engagement that followed shattered Japanese tactical doctrine completely. As Zeros dove on the Hellcats, the American fighters didn't scatter or attempt to turn. They maintained formation, accelerating in a gentle dive that preserved their energy advantage. The Hellcat's armor included 212 pounds of plate protecting the pilot, 110 pounds around the oil system, and self-sealing tanks that could absorb dozens of hits. As Zeros exhausted their ammunition in diving passes, the Hellcats executed their counterattack. Instead of turning to dogfight, they used their weight as a weapon, climbing to altitudes where the Zero's engine struggled for oxygen. They came down on us like hawks on sparrows, Shiga wrote. Their weight gave them speed we couldn't match. They would dive, fire those 6 terrible guns, then climb away before we could react. 8 Zeros were shot down, no Hellcats were lost. By November 1943, Lieutenant Commander Tao Tanamizu, one of the few pilots who had survived multiple Hellcat encounters, briefed the 204th Air Group with sobering reality. Forget everything you know about air combat. The Americans have changed the rules. They no longer fight our fight. They fight like executioners, not warriors. The Hellcat wasn't designed to outturn the Zero. It was designed to never need to. Using energy fighting doctrine, Hellcat pilots maintained speed and altitude, converting potential energy to kinetic energy in slashing attacks that gave Zero pilots no opportunity to use their superior maneuverability. The technological gap became increasingly apparent. The Hellcat's 6 Browning M2 machine guns fired 4 500 rounds per minute total, each 50 caliber bullet delivering 3 500 foot-pounds of energy. The Zero's 7.7 mm machine guns delivered merely 750 foot-pounds per projectile. More disturbing were reports of American radar-guided fighter direction, allowing Hellcat pilots to be guided to their targets by shipboard controllers who could detect Japanese aircraft from 50 miles away. By January 1944, the Japanese pilot crisis had become catastrophic. Pre-war Imperial Navy pilot training had required 3 years, with pilots entering combat with 700 flight hours. By early 1944, Japanese naval pilots were entering combat with 300 hours, Army pilots with 200. Fuel shortages meant most training occurred in gliders. Meanwhile, American pilots arrived with 300 hours minimum, including extensive gunnery practice and energy tactics training. The Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944, demonstrated the complete transformation of aerial warfare. Admiral Gisaburo Ozawa launched his strikes in 4 waves, confident that Japanese pilot skill would prevail. American radar detected the first wave at 150 miles, vectoring Hellcats for perfect interception positioning. Of 69 Japanese aircraft in the first wave, 42 were shot down in 12 minutes of combat. Commander David McCampbell, leading Air Group 15, shot down 7 aircraft that single day. The Zeros tried to turn with us, McCampbell reported. We simply refused. We'd make a high side run, shoot one down, zoom climb back to altitude. They'd try to follow, stall out, and another Hellcat would pick them off. By day's end, the Japanese had lost 346 carrier aircraft plus 50 land-based aircraft. American losses totaled 30 aircraft from all causes. American pilots that evening coined the term turkey shoot. The enemy aircraft had been as helpless as game birds. The psychological impact proved devastating. Admiral Ozawa wrote in his after-action report, "The enemy's radar-guided fighter direction achieved something we thought impossible. The industrialization of air combat. Each Hellcat was not an individual fighter but a component in a vast machine. By 1945, the technological chasm had become unbridgeable. The F-6 F-5 Hellcat incorporated water injection boosting power to 200 horsepower, improved armor, and the K-14 computing gun sight that calculated deflection automatically. Even Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai, Japan's legendary ace, was nearly killed in his first Hellcat engagement, despite his extensive experience. The transformation of Japanese naval aviation from elite force to kamikaze operations represented the ultimate admission of Hellcat superiority. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, father of the kamikaze program, justified it with stark mathematics. If a Zero attacks a carrier conventionally, probability of success is near zero. If the Zero becomes a bomb, probability increases to 30%. The pilot dies either way. By war's end, the F-6F Hellcat achieved a 19.3 to 1 kill ratio, produced 305 U.S. Navy aces, and accounted for 75% of all Navy air-to-air victories. Of the 18,000 Japanese naval aviators who had started the war, fewer than 100 combat-experienced pilots remained by August 1945. In his final interview before his death in 2000, Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai provided perhaps the most honest assessment. The Zero made Japan a great naval power. The Hellcat made Japan realize it was never as great as it believed. We thought we were samurai. The Hellcat showed us we were just men with outdated weapons facing the future. The F-6F Hellcat had entered service weighing twice what the Zero weighed. Carrying armor the Zero didn't possess, powered by engines the Japanese couldn't build, armed with weapons they couldn't match, guided by radars they couldn't detect, and flown by pilots they couldn't equal in training. Japanese pilots had initially laughed at it, because they didn't understand that every extra pound represented not weakness, but the strength of an industrial democracy that could afford to protect its warriors. By the time they understood, their laughter had transformed into final letters home, their mockery into kamikaze missions, their confidence into complete collapse. The Hellcat hadn't merely defeated the Zero, it had destroyed an entire philosophy of warfare, proving that in modern combat, the nation capable of building superior systems would inevitably destroy the nation that could only produce superior individual warriors.